to order. And we just barely have a quorum, so that's great. Let's end the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, we have no one signed up, so we're good. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, second, and seconds, any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you, that's unanimous. Great, consent agenda. Need a motion? I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, all in favor? That is unanimous. Great, thank you. Special presentations, student representative. Elise, is that you? Yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Of course.
I'm really shortly because we're studying group for our history test.
Yes, that's definitely a priority.
So, over November and December, I still have a food drive for the November. We raised 23 total boxes for local families in Creswell. And we got to deliver them and give them to families, we get to meet with families, delivering them, and then we Malachi brought 4 boxes to looking glass, as well as a lot of socks. Looking glass is a homeless, or they help homeless, I think they're stationed out of Cloud Grove. And then we did our best to make the boxes out of healthy foods.
Yeah, they're stationed out in Eugene, West 11th, and it was really cool. They were very appreciative. They kind of got to show me their donation center and all the stuff that they're taking in as a season, and what it's going towards, which is unhousing. So, and we did our boxes. Yeah, and I got to deliver some of those to the families.
Great.
And it was very difficult.
We had a powder puff and Keenan. Juniors won the powder puff for the 30 years in a row. And then the seniors won He-Man. We went to like a quadruple kickoff for the winning of our game. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I heard like eight kickoffs or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna start talking about it though, because I'll rant about it.
Awesome.
But that was really fun. We had a good amount of student involvement and some big competition this year. And then winter sports just started. We've got girls and boys basketball and then girls and boys wrestling. Our basketball teams recently played the Nazareth Catholic College from Australia, and our boys basketball team beat them. So that was a fun event. I believe wrestling is at Junction City today, and then both boys and girls basketball have home games tomorrow.
Sandy and Christian.
Friday.
And Friday.
Both tomorrow and Friday. I have updates for our National Honor Society. They volunteered at the Festival of Trees over Thanksgiving break. I did that. I was teaching the fun. I was playing little wreath ornaments and show little kids how to make it. It was pretty cute. And then we did a fall fundraiser selling holiday goods to raise money to buy Christmas presents for a local family in need. I was able to got to shop for them. It was a fun experience, and then we get to deliver them next week, I believe. And then they're doing a coat drive, which I believe is just the like individuals, but if anybody wants to bring in anything, then I'm sure they will be open to that as well. Okay. Oh. Backwards. He has a mind of his own.
It happens sometimes, don't worry.
Some updates for the school. Last week was college application week at Creswell High School. They had activities every day for the seniors. They helped out with some scholarship applications. We have 2 student teachers in the building right now. Miss Bab is one of them. And then our Sources of Strength did a little project to try and spread gratitude for Thanksgiving. It's pictured right there.
Okay, before you move on, can you talk about sources of strength?
Yes, so sources of strength is, like a mental health awareness group. They meet every month and talk about how to spread awareness across the school. I'm not like totally informed about it, I'm not in it, but
And it's a new club, right?
yeah.
Is that what I'm gathering?
It's like last year, I believe.
That sounds awesome. I love that.
And then, with the bulletin board, they gave out like turkey hands, and you'd write like 5 things you were grateful for, and then they went around each class and they would like participate. It was a fun little project.
Great. Who's the advisor of that?
Miss
It's
Rose.
you, Liz.
And Lori Novel and Kelly Trent Valley.
Okay, all right, very cool, very cool.
And then we have.
Please pass on kudos to them for helping with that. I think that's a great thing.
And then more updates, we're doing a concrete path into the gym, which I noticed. I'm grateful for that, because I remember, I don't play volleyball anymore, but I used to, I remember I'd be running like for practice, and I'd be like, trying to run it, and I'd like roll my ankle.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal. So that is gonna be a lifesaver for a lot of people. And then our softball and baseball fields are looking pretty good. They made a lot of progress. I've noticed a lot of students recognizing that. Like, I think a lot more students have shown interest, like in the sports, just seeing the newer fields, which is exciting, especially for me. And then, leadership is planning an assembly for next Friday. Can you talk about that again?
Yeah, so we're doing a little assembly before everybody has to break, which is see the snowball, we plan on doing a snowball night of staff and students. The seniors also are getting congratulated for beating the staff in donations for the food drive. So they're getting to high a teacher in the face, which is pretty cool. So we're also planning that.
Who's the teacher?
It's gonna be raffle, so the first 30 students,
Oh my
the first 30 seniors in the gym are gonna get a raffle ticket. Or a raffle ticket, and that senior will get to select from a line of teachers, it's pretty, real exciting.
That or you.
But yeah, so that's the winner.
We did it, our freshman year for Thursday, it was a pretty big deal.
Oh.
It was exciting. One of the students got fired, that was probably the best part.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kate and Rob.
Probably the highlight of the year. Then here's our flyer for our Bulldog Holiday Market. Okay, pass all these out, great. It is, a market, we sell like the CTE made classes, their goods that they made, and then it's also an opportunity for student entrepreneurs to open up shops for their business and sell some of their goods. In like collaboration with the Winter Lights Festival, which will be on Saturday.
I love the fact that you guys are doing that when you had the market at the springtime sometime last year. Loved all the things that were for sale. So the fact that this is gonna be out in the community, this is great.
Yeah, I was involved with that one in the spring, and that was super fun, so I'm excited
Yeah.
to see how this one, especially in a more community based event.
Yeah, me too.
The trifold that Lance handed out, just talk about the start of the CTE program, but also I think the date for the Bulldog Market in the spring is on there, maybe May 10th.
Okay.
Sweet.
Same as the,
That's not what there's not in that.
the what,
Yeah.
It's at the community
garage sale.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, yes.
Any questions?
That's great. But thank you. Love the PowerPoint too. Way to go.
Man, I tell you, that was a real professional presentation. That's a nice job. I was gonna say your presentation, the lines have really changed, fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you guys need to speak out to go study?
We're gonna watch this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Phil,
I told you that would make me feel more comfortable by having familiar faces.
yeah.
I usually don't graphic.
Give a second.
So you have to glare, I'm not quite ready, just wait.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Liz, you're here for the next one.
I'm here for the next one, you got this. Go forward, let's go with studies. Can I play this for my classroom?
So I managed to lose my voice in the last
hour, like, they just talked to me 2 hours ago and I was totally fine. So I'll stand far away from everybody, because apparently I'm getting cold.
No worries.
Good timing for me, right? And don't worry, it's not like this is what I'll be doing all day. Yeah, nice job, Elise, with your presentation. It was fun. In case you guys don't know, I'm Liz Babs. I not only do leadership group, but I also am a part of the ELA department. What I'm here to talk about today is I know that you guys last time talked about the larger data and looked at like the SBAC data and kind of looked at that across schools, right? Like that, yes, something you did that. And I really wanted to show what we've been working on like as a team with the language arts department. I'm actually really excited about this work and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. Okay, so as a team, we've really been working to identify major writing skills. So, you know, ELA is really tasked with teaching so many different skills. We teach everything from, you know, Shakespeare to poetry, to seminal documents, to informational pieces, to scholarly pieces. And then on the writing end, you know, every kind of writing you can imagine, from narrative to poetry to literary analysis. And so, you know, when you ask an ELA team like, well, let's see the data, it's like, well, oh my goodness, like, that's a lot of information. So as a group, we really looked and we decided that we wanted to look at our writing skills. As a team, we thought that the writing skills is really where everything else gets funneled into, right? If we're looking at writing skills, we're also seeing how students are reading, right? How students are reading both fictional and informational text, because that's going to show up in how they're writing. So this is a really great place for us to start. So what we did is, as a team, I'd say about 3 years ago, right? We really started focusing on our PLCs and our content area teams. And at the beginning, what we did is we sat down and we said, okay, these are the big standards, the big skills we want to hit. As far as writing goes, we looked at what the SBAC assesses for, and we wanted to align with that. Not only because, of course, those students will be taking it junior year, but it was just a really great starting place of like, okay, these are obviously skills that we want these kids to be leaving high school with. So as you can see up here, the SBAC, on their test for the 11th graders, they use 3 extended writing assessments. They write 1 informative / explanatory writing assessment, in which they are using different sources and then have to explain something pulling from those sources. They also write an argumentative. They also read sources and then have to argue a case. And then they do a narrative. So we looked at that as a team and we decided to do an informative explanatory writing piece, which I will probably be calling synthesis from here on out. And what synthesis really means is taking from different sources and putting it into one cohesive piece, right? We also decided to focus on argumentative and literary analysis, right? English is classically literary analysis, although it has branched out into all of these other things. We're gonna look into focusing on narrative. We felt like students get that skill in a lot of other places. So we really wanted to focus on those big ones.
Liz, tell me what narrative means again.
Oh, so narrative is going to be like a personal story or storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, so it's storytelling rather than like telling information about something, analyzing something. It's storytelling. Yes, good question. So I kind of wanted to show where we've been and where we are going, and then we can look at how we've been compiling data. So, like I said, we looked at those major writing skills, and then we decided, okay, how are we going to articulate them across grade levels, right? Because 9th graders and 12th graders, while we're going to look at the same skill, right, which is going to be informational writing, they're not going to be
doing the same tasks and getting the same instruction because they're different levels of students. So how do we as a team identify that? So what we've done is we've aligned our instruction so that content and rigor fits each grade level. Then we work to align our rubrics and graphic organizers, and I'll get into that in a second. So in our first year, like 3 years ago, like I just said, we identified those major skills, right? And we created a vertical alignment. I'll just show you what this looks like real quick. We won't get into it because it's a working document. So this is really what we worked on. We looked at what each grade level reads, like the big kind of units they do, and then how they're fitting each of those target standards through those units. This is very much a working document that we continuously upgrade and update. And if you want to look at it in more depth, we can have it here, but we won't get into the nitty-gritty of it. But I want to, this is where we started. So then in our second year, what we did is we worked to align our rubric. Can we go down a bit? Yes, good. Thank you for moving these down. So when we're collecting data, what we had found when we started before all of this is that what the problem was is we are looking at like all different skills we were looking at, and all the teachers were using all different rubrics. And that's not a great way to look at data if you are looking at different things and using different measures for those things. It was really hard to sit down. It was like comparing apples and oranges. So this was the next step that I was really proud of. So if you guys want to take a look first at the one that says Smarter Balance. Yeah, I'm so sorry about my voice.
You're doing fine.
So does everybody have one that says Smarter Balanced in front of them?
Yes.
So this is obviously the Smarter Balance rubric. This is what they use for the state test in order to assess those extended writing pieces. So we took this and we used it as our jumping off point, and we made our own rubrics that aligned with our students, our instruction. You know, all of the English teachers, we have backgrounds in English. And so we use those skills that we have along with the state skills. So then in front of you, you should also have, well, go ahead. We should also have, I think I knew what's right. So you should also see this one that says synthesis rubric. So this is what the English department uses just for synthesis. So of course, we have a different rubric for every one of our skills. We're just gonna look at synthesis because that's a lot of rubrics to look at. If you take the time and you look at it closely, you'll notice while it's in a different direction, because that was how our brains work, it has the same number of categories. We used pretty much the same categories that we were assessing them under. So ideas in content, organization, textual evidence, and conventions and formatting. It's not the exact same as the SBAC, because we're doing longer writing assessments. Our assessments tend to have a little bit more rigor. And so we needed to create a rubric that aligned with our teaching, but we use the Smarter Balance as a jumping off point because then students will know where they are at for that test and for those skills. You'll also see then this nice handy single point rubric. It's the same thing as this, just in a very user-friendly model. So this is what your students would be seeing because this is a lot to look at, right? So this is what we use as instructors to really see where they're landing. And then this is what the students get. You guys have seen one of these before. This is what the students would get because this is way more user friendly, right?
So,
Yeah.
and that one that the students get, is that their feedback form?
Yeah.
On their performance?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we worked really hard to create one of these for each one of those areas, as well as other things we do, like we did one for presentations, we did one for annotated bibliographies, we've made, others, we're just looking at those few. There are no questions about rubrics for anyone?
Love this.
Yeah, please.
I will comment, the rubrics are really helpful because like coming from a writing standpoint, you could pinpoint like what you need to work on and that helps a lot. Knowing what to get better at, opposed to like when a teacher just gives you a grade and you're like, what did I do wrong? Because it helps you like advance your skills further.
Yeah, and now through 9, 10, 11, 12, they'll all be seeing the same rubrics, which I think will be really helpful them to see how they're progressing year after year. And I'll show you in just a second how then we're gonna use these. And I also didn't pay Lisa. She's like, "In my English class right now." So, where am I? So, that was what we worked on last year. So that took a ton of time, to put up there and to align all of those. So this year, we decided we really wanted to focus on synthesis. We found that a lot of our students, one of their big skills, just anecdotally that they were lacking, is an ability to do really thorough research and to evaluate sources in a real life sort of way. They can do it kind of fundamentally, but not in ways that we found would be really helpful for them in their next steps in life. So that was what we really wanted to focus on for this year. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. And this year we also created a data tracker and we've begun inputting our data into it. And I'll talk about that as well. And next year, we're gonna move forward, continue to track our data. And I'm really excited to adjust our instructional practices. So what I want to talk about next is our synthesis articulation. So I'm gonna give you, I only have it, these were like kind of fat, so I only made enough for y'all up here. And again, I'm not expecting you to read this right this second, but I'm you guys still have at some point. Well, good you were. You're the next one to another person. Do all of you have then a yes, those guys, yeah, perfect.
Mini research.
Yes. So if you look at the SBAC one, it's a lot. But it's basically a sample of what the students will get on the actual SBAC test. So what they'll be asked to do is to read through a bunch of little tiny sources, in my opinion, little tiny sources, they probably think that they're not involved. And so they'll have like, what, 3 or 4 sources that they read through. And then they are asked to take information from all of those sources and turn it into a small essay or an extended writing, as they say. So this is a skill that we find on the Smarter Balance test. And also we've identified they are going to use throughout their lives. Think about how many times you have searched for things, found information about things, and needed to put it in one place, right? Like that is something we do all the time, and students have got to be able to do this. So that's what we really focused on this year. I handed out to everybody also a copy of some different synthesis prompts throughout their grade levels. Some of the grades have already done this one, like my seniors haven't yet. That's our next prompt we're doing. But I just wanted you guys to have an example of what kind of prompts they're getting under the synthesis skill. And I was also going to show you, this I was kind of excited about. We also worked to articulate synthesis throughout grades 9, 10, and 11. I think maybe the most important thing to focus on here that I find the most interesting that we work on is really like looking at sources by each grade level. So, you know, we talked about what they wanted. We wanted them to be able to do by the time they graduated. Whether students are moving on to, oh wait, I'm gonna backtrack. One thing I wanna note is we have different tracks for honor students and kind of the standard 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm just talking about those standard classes. The honors track does very similar stuff, but they're preparing for AP Lit, they're preparing for writing 121. So while you're thinking about this is just those standard English classes, not the honors track. So I don't know, I just would like to think about that in my head. So what we determined is kind of like students will like level up each year by what kind of source they, like what kind of sources they are interfacing with. And how they are getting those sources and how they're evaluating them. So 9th graders, what we decided is that the teacher will be providing most of the sources, but there'll be all different types of sources. So for example, a movie, a scholarly source, which would be like something from an academic journal, something from a scientific journal. Those would be read together and they would be learning how to annotate, okay? They'd be learning the basics of source evaluation and talking about each source for its validity. 10th grade, the teacher would be providing most of the sources and you actually have those 2 prompts. So for example, the sophomores, they use a novel and then sources to synthesize that. So they get like, I think, I just talked to Kyla about this today. She said they had like 11 different sources that they looked at, which included YouTube, like a valid YouTube video, a story, an article, a scholarly source, and the book. And then they got to choose 3 of them and found 1 of their own sources, okay? 11th grade, they level up again, in which they'll be provided with some sources, but now they're gonna learn how to find scholarly sources. We have access to the LCC database, which is really cool. This is something that I learned again anecdotally that a lot of students graduate and are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to use a database. So we wanted to be able to start introducing that in high school. And then 12th grade, this is when like, this is their last hurrah before they're out there. And I teach the 12th graders. And this is when they're beginning, though they're finding all of their own sources. So we're about to embark on this journey right after winter break. And they will then be beginning to find one of their own scholarly sources. That's a lot of information. Does anybody have questions about synthesis articulation? And what synthesis is or what we're doing?
I have a couple questions and they may be tangential, so if they're unrelated, just say we can. Okay, so the first one is, like in the rubric, not necessarily for synthesis, but for everything, writing convention. So I've literally just went through 80 applications in my job and they don't know how to use commas. They don't know, like, does the apostrophe go before the S or after the S?
Right.
So what are you finding in the writing samples and how do you correct for basic, like the convention, if I'm using your right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you help me remember to come back to that question because it absolutely relates to my next slide.
Perfect.
Did
Okay,
you have another one?
I
Yeah.
did. What was my next question? Darn it, the harder I'm thinking about it. I'll,
Let me know.
yeah, I will.
Okay, but this perfectly piggybacks on the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is how the heck we're using this data. Everybody's favorite thing to talk about. So my magnum opus was building, this wonderful spreadsheet. This is just a screenshot of it. So that way I was protecting student information. But this is essentially what it looks like. So as you can see, it tells us what class it is. This is the sophomores. I have different tabs for freshman class, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And the way it works is you'll see up there next to skill, they'll have literary analysis, synthesis, and argumentative. And linked with that is each prompt and each rubric. So we are using this as a team, and we just developed this because we finally developed all of our infrastructure. I know it might seem kind of crazy for it to take 3 years to get to this point, but each one of those steps took hours and hours and hours. And without that infrastructure we built, we couldn't cohesively compare data, because like I said, it was apples and oranges up until this point. Now, we're like, oh, we all have the same skill we're looking at, we have the exact same measure we're looking at, and I'm excited about it. So you'll see that this one's like literary analysis. So for each grade level, we put in the students, and we broke it down into those different aggregates. So it matches exactly what's on the rubric: ideas, content, organization, textual evidence, formatting and conventions. And then we just did an overall, whether they met, did not meet, or did not test on that standard. So where we are at today in our lives is we just started Q2 of the school year. So most of us in the ELA department have done 2 essays. We usually do about 4. And as you know, we're on a 4x4 schedule, so we only have half the students. At this point, we'll get the other half in the spring. So what we are starting to do now is to look at our data. We went in and popped in all of this data, so every single grade level has the data for the students that we've had. What we were able to do today with our time is we sat down and we just looked at the overall, right? And we sat down and we talked about those students that did not meet and those students that did not test. And we were able to talk about them in real time of why they did not meet and why they did not test, to see if there was anything like across the board that we were facing. We took notes as we went to talk about those students and see if there's any trends with it in general. I'm looking up. The biggest thing we talked about was chronic absenteeism was the biggest factor in students not meeting or not testing. There were more students who ended up not testing, which meant they never turned in the assignment, rather than did not meet, and they were all students with chronic absenteeism, or students who joined us late into the school year and missed a lot of content. So our next step though, and our next meeting, is we're gonna look at the aggregate data. So we're gonna look at each one of those areas. So for example, formatting and conventions, and we're gonna look and see, is there a huge swath of freshmen, this is just you know, not real, who are not meeting in formatting and conventions? If that's the case, how are we gonna adjust our instructional practices? So to answer your question, that's our next step. Because now we finally are able to like look at this data. Any questions about this?
I have one question.
Yeah.
You were talking about this group of students, half the students get through the first semester. With ELA, and then the second half of the students in the second semester. The testing window, and when they test, how many opportunities do they get feedback before the assessment comes, the SBAC?
Oh, that's it. Before the
The second half of the students.
I don't teach the 11th graders. When is the test this year?
So the test for the first half of the students will be the first half of, or sorry, the first week of February. And then the second group, we're trying to do as late in May as we can, so that we get as much feedback as they can.
Okay.
So we test them in 2 different groups based on when they take it. This very first year we went into a 4x4, it was awesome because they opened the state test January 10th, which meant we could test in that class that they were in with that teacher. Last year, they moved it to February, so our kids are done and have moved on to second term, so we have to pull them to do their state testing, which that's when your numbers go down as well. So they will have, the majority of the term. So they'll have lots of opportunities for feedback with the rubric, because we won't do it until, yeah, mid-May. I didn't bring that calendar, sorry, but it's
Okay.
like May. I don't even, like, we're like right up to the line. What's the very last day we could do it and still get it done by the deadline?
So in theory though, they'll have all of freshman year, all of sophomore year, and then I would say at least 2 writing samples in their English class junior year. That's what I test.
For that big writings.
Yes, big writing samples, like whole essays, not like, they're pretty short on that stack. And I can come back to questions about this, but this also really, kind of leads me to our next steps and what I think of as the importance of this data that we're collecting. So we're obviously gonna add remaining data as the year continues. This was only half of our students we've been looking at. I'm excited to look at the aggregate data that Lacey brought up to actually look at like what parts specifically today. I mean, we had an hour and a half, right? With my PLC today, so I'm excited to break that data down. I'm excited to be able to adjust the instruction practice to pinpoint areas for improvement. We're also planning on adding a column for interim assessment data for 9th and 10th grade. And then to review the honors track and articulate their writing skills. You know, and all of this really, I think that it's really important to look at this in-house data. I think that the SBAC is a really important measure as a statewide measure, and I think that it has a lot of merit and a lot of value for how we get funding, how we are perceived optically. But I think if we like really want to see what our students are doing and really use data in our classrooms, this in-house data is going to serve the English department so well. Like we were able to look at students in real time, not a full year later when they're seniors, to see where they are at in each of these categories. And then be able to like, we could look at this and by the end of the year, be adjusting our instructional strategies. And you know, I know that consistently getting students to take the SBAC test now that it is not a graduation requirement is increasingly difficult. And I think it's really important to be like coupling this data along with that if we're like really looking at what our students are doing. And I would encourage all of you to do that and to talk with us.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So all 11th graders take the SBAC, even,
Except for those who opt out.
okay, so hypothetically,
Yeah.
that it is a grade level test for those who choose to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that would include those honor track
Yes.
students, but right now we're not.
Those, okay, sorry, finish your.
Oh, but right now, we're not really looking at how they're like articulating some of their skills in the same way, like they're giving the rubric, but we're not really tracking them at this point, so.
Right.
So we wouldn't have an idea of how well they would potentially test, because I mean, that is what this data is
But-
gonna give you, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna be able to say, like,
Yeah.
look, our kids, we
Yes.
see this rubric, we know that they're gonna
Yes.
be able to get the test back and do the thing, right?
Yes.
That's the goal?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just saying to that group right now,
Yeah.
we're starting kind of with the bottom piece of like, hey, these are the kids that maybe are not showing up. And we want to see how we can support them to be successful in this, and then you're gonna move into looking at.
Yeah, and I think also. I think maybe what I'm also really trying to show is that. We are very much preparing those students to take the state test. We align all of our information with the state test. But we find these assessments to be more crucial to us as a team for like how our students are doing.
And for whatever they're gonna do post-secondary,
Yes,
right? So you were talking about kind of the life piece of like being able to analyze data in a certain way or
Yes.
process that information or,
Yeah.
you know.
Like, I really would like to stress that like our alignment isn't necessarily trying to funnel them to do super well on the state test because so many of them opt out of it, but it is to also show the same type of data to show where they are at. Since so many of them are opting out, it's really necessary to have this other piece of information, this tool that we can look at.
And maybe even sharing with the student, like, hey, you realize you've done really great on this rubric, you would, if you choose to take the, you know, state test, you're probably gonna do fairly well, and it'd be kind of neat to see. I mean, that is kind of an empowering thing to have that for them already, where they know that they're prepared for it. Because as a student, having a student, a lot of times, that's the fear, is am I prepared, am I gonna do well,
Right.
right? So should I take the college credit, am I gonna be able to pass and have this be a successful?
And I would say that those honors students, maybe I heard the question differently. What she presented tonight was based on, the students who are not in the honors classes, but that data and the rubrics and that information is still being used the same way with the honors classes. It's just that you only have one, you know, in the freshman versus there's two other freshmen. And so when you look at it across the board, there's not a comparison, but each class, the data is being looked at to support that student writing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and that was how I took, that's what
Yeah, okay.
that was my understanding.
Have different goals for the, like I said, like we're trying to prepare them for AP, like AP literature is its own entity, like
Yeah.
it's a totally different test, it's a totally different curriculum. It's harder to like fit this in the same way. I don't know.
So in my mind, I was actually kind of going to Lacey's piece, so I again have a son who likes to write, and sometimes it is the small grammatical pieces, like the appropriate comma and the things, you know, but he does well with writing, but sometimes it's those smaller things, so that's why but they're getting that from the rubric, he'll know, like, hey,
Right.
Mom, you can work from your those types of things, so I was just curious, just how the overlap would work, like for the long term.
Yeah.
And if,
Well, what I would love to do, like I said, next is to start plugging in that honors data. I don't know that Deborah, I don't know that she started honors 9 yet. And because they're in different parts of the term of the school year there. But yes, that's our next step as well, because that data is really important too. And it's.
I think it's really cool. I just want to say that I think being able to have the real-time information to know how, like you said, to kind of adjust, to be able to give them the support before they move to the next piece, or maybe kind of scuff that into the next year.
Yeah.
And as a team to be able to have that information.
Yeah, I'm actually, this is something, like, I've been at Creswell for 10 years, and I've like, this is gonna sound really cheesy, but I've like actually dreamed of doing this. We have a really great ELA team right now, me, Deborah and Kyla, who are like on top of it and good at it, and I'm excited to be able to like plug this data in and like look at it now.
Well, thank you for sharing this with us.
Does anyone have more questions for me?
Yeah, I wrote them down so I don't forget about that.
Thanks, good job.
So my first question is, if there's, like, writing is so integral to almost every discipline, right? Like science has more numbers.
Yeah.
But is there opportunities once you start getting a uniform way of looking and knowing, like, the freshman class needs help with?
Yeah.
Can you then work with history teachers and others to say, like, still do your history thing, but the one thing across everything you want the freshmen doing is this one thing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like, when we have this information, if I can say, oh my gosh, I keep these poor freshmen, I keep using them as our. Freshman, I don't know an example. Is like, oh my gosh, none of our freshmen can do citations at all. They have no idea. They missed that during COVID. We can say as a staff, like, look at this, you know, in one of our PDs, like, here's how we can incorporate citations across content areas.
And we have a rubric that's used for across the contents besides language arts, because those are the others more specific. But like she said, it would be nice to be able to then see what the data says to incorporate that into the.
Yeah, I was remembering even when Jordan was taking public speaking, she had, like, you were using narrative, persuasive, argumentative. I remember she had different speeches she had to write, right? And there was a template of this many paragraphs, this is a persuasive speech, this is a narrative. And so then if I think of Mike's question of opportunities for feedback, if you know a class is struggling, even public speaking in a small way would give them a chance to get that. Because now you have a uniform way of seeing what.
Yeah, and this is why I think this data is cool, because like I said, with the SBAC, what's hard about it, especially in high school, even when our students are taking it with fidelity and taking it, all of them taking it, is we just got the data. These kids are seniors, some of them only have 3 weeks left in English class. Like, that's really hard to use, right? We have 8th grade stuff, of course, but the first time they get tested is in the 11th grade. And so, while I think this is preparing them for those tests that, are helpful for bigger things outside of my, scope, I think that this is like really important for our practice.
It's like you invented the high school iReading that I see in kindergarten, with the iBuddy reading, and they get like the scores immediately. You just did that for.
Yeah, it might take like 2 to 3 weeks, so. You can't speak because we're not sure at all.
Sure,
I mean,
but you've got it.
what's your second question?
My second question was, I was thinking again, those applications that I just read, I could tell when they were using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
To answer their supplemental essay
Oh my gosh,
questions.
it's like they all sound the same.
How are you seeing that struggle and you can find that and you're like, do this again without?
Yeah, I can talk about some of the practices that we use.
Like, I don't want you to spill the secret on how you figure that out.
No, I
Just
don't
like
think,
you're seeing
I don't
the-
think there needs to be, I think that, as a staff, we kind of started recognizing students using GPT probably last year, like way more. I think like Smattering used it here and there before that, but it wasn't like widespread. And the way, we've talked as an English department, and I've talked anecdotally, like with the history department in these areas, that it's a lot easier to like cheat via writing. And we haven't, again, this is just like us sharing information with one another, but what a lot of us have done is putting into our syllabus information about ChatGPT and what happens if you use it, that it is like on the same level of plagiarism, so whatever your classroom kind of standard is for that. And I was trying to use like AI checkers, and they're just not accurate. And then you're in like an argument with a student who's like, well, I didn't use AI. I'm like, well, you definitely did, but I have no way to prove it. So what a lot of teachers have started doing, including myself, is that you absolutely need, like, what I'm looking for, like a record of your work. So for me in my classroom, what that looks like is they have an outline or a graphic organizer that we've done together. We also have a shared graphic organizer in which they have their thesis, they have their topics, they have all of their evidence. And then there needs to be a record. They have to do it on Google Drive, and I have to be able to see the record of their work and their edits. That's how I deal with it. Also, we've been doing more in-class assessments. Like I know Mrs. Cannon, Deborah is doing handwritten in-class essays. I've done that. I've used Securely, that they can only be like, so like one I just did with my English 10 honors, because I was kind of, they also like the gray area for them is hard of like, well, I used it just to edit. I'm like, well, this fundamentally does not sound like you. And like, so they have a hard time with that gray area. So to really get like, okay, where are you guys really at? we prepared for an in-class essay. This was actually our, like, what did we do? Rhetorical analysis with the sophomores, and they did all this preparation. They had their graphic organizers, they were ready to go. And then in an hour and 20 minutes, they wrote an in-class essay on Google Docs, but I used securely to like keep them only on Google Docs. So it's like a,
The teacher hack.
yeah. So I think people are using different strategies like that.
Okay.
Very cool. Does anyone have other questions about that? It's something we're continuously, working through, because it's a tool, but I think for a lot of students, they have a hard time with the, like I said, the gray area of like, how do you use it as a tool without it working instead of you? And I think older students are able to understand that a lot better, like seniors, I think know that gray area, but like sophomores have a hard time. It like slips that into like, that wasn't your thing.
I have a couple of comments.
Yeah,
I have a high appreciation for the work that you're doing with literacy. I mean, if they're going to survive in life, it's going to be, literacy is going to be a big part of it. It's going to get them everywhere.
yeah,
The other thing is that every subject area that we teach, but those that are assessed have their own complexities. But they don't have the weight of the standards that you do, or that ELA does.
yeah,
So many
yeah,
to teach, you can't teach them all.
a lot. I have a whole binder full.
So, the assessments and the data that you're pulling out of those assessments, is great for you to know. But it would also, if the school understood what you're trying to tackle here and how many standards you have to, that you have to address. And they pick some of those up for you or with you, like the social studies
Yeah.
department collaborating with
Absolutely.
you on writing. And maybe just looking at organization and conventions within there. I mean, that's, that you could certainly use the help.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's true in every school.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just is where the weight of
Yeah,
the standards are. So nice job
thank you.
on this. The formative assessments and getting the feedback to the kids. That's the key. That's
Yeah.
the key.
Yeah,
So good on you and your team.
thank you. Yes, we've been working really hard. And it's nice to like finally have it all in one place so we can look at it, or at least move by the end of the year. It happened. Any other questions from anybody or one?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love knowing the process of how you go about it
Yeah,
and seeing everything that you're putting together.
yeah, but I think it's also nice to see like, this is how we're using our Wednesday afternoons of like building these things.
Yes.
And it takes like a lot of time, like cumulative time, to make it happen. And it's nice, like, this has been 3 years in the making, so.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm glad your voice held out.
Thank you.
You're pro. You've been texting too many kids.
Yeah.
Blame it on the kids.
Wow.
Thank you. Have
Yeah.
a good evening.
Thanks, and I shared this with Joel, so if anybody wants the slide.
I still want to go in and look at.
Yeah, and then you can click on those links.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Get well.
Okay, I'm logging in and get back to my agenda. Okay,
You're up, Nikki.
I know. Superintendent report.
The report. Here we go. Okay, so lots of data tonight, lots of information. Love that.
Yeah, me too.
You got the, added, bye, good night. The added glance, performance report. To look at. And then I have some other data for you that kind of aligns with that. But on my highlights, I'll go over that in just a moment. I wanted to point some things out on the highlights, though, on bond updates. On October, so the bids are in progress for the classroom doors and exterior metal doors here at this school. That's for safety and security. So in these older wings over here and that, like that door right there, they're all gonna have, steel casings around them and solid doors in every classroom and on every entrance or access to this building. So, that's in the progress and we're hitting it, it's anywhere from, I'd say $900 to $1,200 a door to replace the whole door. But these are 1950 doors, I mean, you know, they need to be replaced, or 1940 doors, 1940. So that's in progress, and then, moving on to, some of the high school updates, the baseball softball field, installation was completed. Some of the touch-ups need to be completed, finished out there. This is the field, the turf only, not the whole, not the stadiums out there, but just the turf is done. And in, they need to come back and do some finishing touches to really clean it up nice and tight. And, Ryan will be coming back with his crew to do that. When the weather breaks and gets a little bit nicer, we need to do a little more work on the bullpens, on the pitching mound and things of that nature, and then around the bases and stuff, but the fields themselves look beautiful. I mean, they're really nice and they did a good job on those. Right now, they're packing, the dugout areas for the foundation that's going in there, the concrete and the building those are. Sure. The gym bleachers, it says they will arrive 12/6, that because they'll be installing them during the winter break. That's at the guidance of, or because of the games that are scheduled there between now and then. So they'll be delivered on the 26th and 27th, and then installed in the 28th and 29th, and if it carries over, they'll do it on the weekend of the 30th.
Exciting.
So we'll have the new bleachers in the gym, the CTE design layout, so all of the schematics and the design, the different areas within that building that, I wanted to see in there, in the building, have been submitted to, the manufacturer. So he is now coming up with a rendering. And then we'll look at the rendering with the committee, and the committee will then say, hey, you know, this, we like this, we want to change this, or we'd like to see something else, or something of that nature. And, we're also getting the land use, guidelines for the area out there, where we are going to put that building exactly, or at least know our options out there in that area, that's outside the greenhouse there. Or in that whole. The ticket booth has, well, here it says started on 11/9, but it's almost completed, it just needs to be painted now. Looks pretty good, I have my office in there if I could. And then, no, I'd be messing my kids over here. I can't do anything without those guys all day. And then the gym building, so they started this week to paint the exterior, they finished the interior. This weekend or last week, I think it was last week or maybe even Monday. But they've been painting the exterior, but we're gonna have to pull back on that because of the humidity in the air, the paint. It doesn't get attached right or adhere right to the building, so. And then we have some more movement on finalizing the chiller for the middle school. And we have another source, Patience Bliss, and the more patients we've had with this, the better we have been able to cut costs. And so we're really getting it down to the final, by winter break, we will be able to name who's going to do the installation and when it's gonna start for the chiller out there, or the air system, I'll just say for that. Any questions on my updates or activities?
Great update, thank you.
As far as my activities, been getting really involved with other superintendents in COSA in what we're advocating from our legislature in this next go round. And we have already, our lobbyists are at the highest level with this, advocate for us at the state level. And I sent you an email today talking about that. So what we've done is brought in other partner agencies to help advocate with us, with our superintendents group, our education group of professionals, administrators. And so we'll continue to follow up on those things which are on the governor's list of initiatives to process with the legislature, but we need to have our voices heard. So that's our strategy, and I'll keep passing that information on to you as we roll into it. As far as this data here, when we look at our performance data and where we are with things like in mathematics, we're just looking at the middle school at 32%. And then across the district, we're running at about 34%, I believe. You know, and 34% is above the state average by 11% or something like that. Those aren't really like great numbers. You know, I think 30% proficiency. And, you know, there are several reasons or things that contribute to these numbers, 43% in science, ELA, and math. You heard us talk about one of them is the absenteeism and the opt-outs. And, you know, when we're pulling in 60–70% of our kids testing, we don't really have a good sample. That's not a significant sample to pull data from and say, this is what we need to do, or this is what we need to do. But on the horizon and accountability, and one of the other things that we are advocating for is if you're holding us accountable to this data, then we need some accountability from the state to require it. So if this is what you're measuring us with, put it in as a graduation requirement. The testing. If you're going to rely on the testing data for that, and that's what you're holding us accountable for, then be accountable for it. Require it. So that's what we're advocating for. But when we look at this and you say, oh my gosh, you know, what's happening here? But as it turns out, when you open this up and look at the back pages like this, where it's disaggregated and broken down, and you see the performance of our kids, typically your most marginalized groups, focal groups of students, are performing extremely well when we're looking at graduation rates, special education, and our Hispanic Latino students and their performance. I mean, those are the highest performing groups in our student body. And typically it's the opposite. And so those students who are being successful within their groups contribute to the whole and are kind of lifting up the success or achievement levels of all, especially in the graduation rates on time and 5 year, which are very high enough in fact that when US News has done the best high schools of America study this year, and this is consistent. We've been consistent over 3 years. But just reflecting off of this data, these 5 success indicators. US best high schools looks at 30% of their survey, their assessment is based on college readiness. 20% is on assessment, your state assessment proficiency. 20% is on state assessment performance. 10% is on underserved student performance. 10% on college curriculum breadth. And then 10% on graduation rate. So that is 100% of how they're assessing all the high schools in America to determine where they rank. Over 27,000 high schools in America, and they whittled it down to 25,000. And those by that criteria, and then those 25,000 are ranked. Of the 25,000 ranked across the country, we come in at number 5,642, which is in the top 22% of the nation. Now, when you're looking at this, you don't see that. I mean, you know, that doesn't pop out to you, but that is the real deal. I mean, this is a national assessment. Of the number of 344 high schools in America, we come out number 51. We're in the top 15%. We were in the top 20% 3 years ago. And then, as far as Lane County goes, we're number 4 in Lane County. And there's some, you know, and we have been number 3 and number 4 for the past 3 years. We need to, you know, so we're in the top 20% in the county. And some of our schools in the county are in the top 2% of the state. The 2 schools that are ahead of us are in the top 2% of the state, and they are in the top 1,000 of the schools in America. And that's South Eugene and Sheldon. So, you know, we're holding our own, holding on, we can do better. But we're not tanking. When we're at 22% nationally, that's 88% that are under us. I mean, that's pretty significant to look at. It's not to say we're satisfied by any means, but we have things that highlight our district, our schools, and what we're doing. And numbers are showing us what we're doing. We're on track. So we're getting there. And ELA having the adoption go through 2 years ago, Amy? The ELA adoption? 3. And in year 3 is where you look for the need. What is happening in year 3 after that adoption? And you're hearing the work that's going on in there. The same thing will follow with math, science, health, whatever it is. And so we're building, this is what we're building on top of. So we look for good things in the future. From what it sounds like, we're going to see some different numbers, and she's saying that they're focused on what they're doing and how they're assessing the kids for the standards that they want to see them perform well in this school. Well, that's going to show up on these assessments. And when the state requires the assessment and we're aligning these formative assessments to those state standards, it's not going to be like we're starting from ground zero. We're already ahead of that time or that requirement coming to us. So it's good stuff. That's questions or
Great report.
good. Soon it will be great.
Well, I think in that article, didn't it say, I think like the one area at the high school level that it seemed like we're a little bit lower than some of the other Lane County schools was the college and career readiness component. But I think with like, if you think of the bond, the CTE and where we're headed and those opportunities that will be provided, it'll be interesting to see in a few years how that changes those numbers, right? 'Cause that was the thing that kind of, that's the one thing that stuck out to me in other areas. I saw where I was like, okay, we're doing a great job. So to me, I thought that was really interesting because that is like the strategic planning where we're headed, where we're going. And so it'll be really interesting to see this, in my opinion, in a few years when all of these amazing things that are being laid, those foundations being laid right now are in full effect.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, I don't know, as a superintendent, I'm gonna put that out on the board anywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, whoever's at the table, this is what we're about, this is what we're working from, and I mean, this is where we are now, but we're going to higher places. We're not content, by any means, so. That's what I got. Any questions or anything else? No? Just get the goats and we're good.
Are you planning to put them in a bus? Are we?
No, I just feel like we have,
We have a new truck over there, or not a new truck, isn't it the Tesla that we're gonna try
Oh my
to go
goodness.
somehow there?
Oh, okay, that makes
no,
sense.
we're not talking about the school district buying a Tesla. It's not a part of the public record that I want to be a part of.
Goats in a Tesla.
All right, Joel's indicated that we have no public comment registered, so we can move past that. Unfinished business, there is a January board meeting date reminder. I'm assuming that's because we moved the meeting date back since school's starting. Okay, so the regular board meeting is the 15th at 6 p.m. Okay, new business, we have a budget calendar that we need to approve, I believe. That was action, right?
Yes.
Yes, action, okay. I apologize, our leadership couldn't be here tonight, so I'm filling in running the meeting, but I don't know the behind the scenes. I'm assuming this calendar is kind of the same template that we've used in the past, so not much different, okay,
All the dates in that calendar are according to law.
okay. Okay, and so we've got a full budget committee, we don't have any vacancies? Oh
No.
my goodness.
You'll have to advertise probably in January or take action to want to post because we've got two, Chris,
You have two.
with them and Aaron. Yeah.
Okay, oh, I'm looking right at the top and now I'm seeing that, okay, two, okay, so in January, we can add that as something that the board can discuss and post. And then the dates all follow through. Any questions about that? It looks like continuing on Zoom, since that's an easy presentation platform to do that. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve, what am I looking at? The budget calendar, the 2024-2025 budget calendar.
Second that.
Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous. Great. Thank you for that. Okay, the next new business item is information about the at-a-glance report cards that Mike talked about in his report. Is there any other questions or thoughts about those? Appreciate you putting those in the packet for us so that we
Yeah,
can see
we'll
that.
need to post those on the website too, Joe.
Yeah, at a glance.
Okay,
Thank you.
sweet. Thank you. All right, next up is reports and information. So I believe that's board reports. Mike, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, a couple things. I been to boys and girls basketball game when they beat Marist. And
What? You shaking up there?
the other thing, I went to a Lane ESD meeting and it really turned out really well because I called Mike up and said, help. What's going on in the district? I've been really busy here working, so I went in and, I had and he told me about where we're ranked in the country, where we're ranked in the states, so
You got to go and brag.
yeah, I tried to keep it toned down, but I had a lot of fun and talking about that. And the thing that, when I was looking through that data, it was very well received by everybody there. The two things that jumped out at me was the way the ELA kids are doing against everybody else. And I think they're, like the white kids, they're like, 8 or 10% above them on some of the grade, some of the classes and stuff, which is, they're doing really well. But the one that really stood out to me was here's a disability, how high the percentages are on time graduate. And I had the privilege of telling everybody at Lane ESD, thanks for helping us out on that one. And that went over pretty good.
Good.
But I almost got a dessert out of that. But that's the only two things.
Excellent. Mary?
I managed to walk over and look at the fields. I haven't been home, but I like really haven't had much time. So I'm hoping to attend some basketball games soon. But I did get to walk over and look at the field, and I just want to say that it looks amazing. That is the extent of what I've done. So,
Okay. It's hard when November is so full with holiday stuff too, right? Kids are in school and, yeah.
It's just gonna be home, right?
yeah, well, for me, it really has been just kind of like getting my feet. And like, I was gonna go to the basketball game and then I ended up having a meeting that ran late, and it just hasn't been, but I had all the time. But yeah,
That's okay. Good. I'm glad you're home now.
thanks, I'll come back, thank you.
I just went to all sports awards, got to endure He-Man volleyball and counter pop. Good. My child is not a volleyball player. Bless his heart for trying. And wrestling, I got to endure my first wrestling meet. I have a really good padded chair and a great stand cooler. And some basketball games, but that's about it, just sports stuff.
Awesome, awesome. What I first want to highlight is, so in my effort to keep everybody updated on advocacy and how we can help, with advocacy in the next legislative session. Mike certainly knows a lot more details through COSA, but I attended 2 advocacy webinars from OSBA. And they identified where their focus is going to be. And so I'll read these. I can put them in an email if you're like, I want to be able to, because I keep referring back to the screenshot I took of the PowerPoint. So funding, there's 3 main categories. Funding is one. And within funding, there's 4 areas that they really want to push on. The first is the sped cap. And so Chanel walked us through how there's a cap on the special education piece and being able to remove that. The second area of funding is summer learning, which I was really happy to hear because we're helped. I mean, the high school has credit recovery, middle school and elementary school is like kind of keeping up. And so we've done great with that. The third is early literacy. And then the fourth is facilities. So what I want to be able to do is work with Mike and probably Amy and Chanel and Joel over the next month, sometime before the legislative session starts, is to get like a 1-page, like Creswell at a glance, 1-page that tells the story of our struggles and where we want to go, right? Where we want to go would be the strategic plan, focused on each of these, and then, you know, identifying the funding struggles that we have and the gap that we have with each of those areas, so that if we're called to go advocate or speak in a committee about it, we've got some facts ready to go with that. So it was helpful to learn these, so we know where to focus. The other 2 main categories, so funding is one, the other is accountability. And under there, they've focused on unfunded mandates. So I'm sure there's like tons of areas that you can go with that. We'll need some help narrowing down how we want to tell Creswell's story with that. And then the third area is addressing chronic absenteeism. So it's showing up now, you know, Liz mentioned it and you've mentioned it in terms of how we're able to meet some of those numbers. So those are the three main areas OSBA wants to talk about, focus on, and then get people to Salem to help testify on. So,
Bus ride. To say it.
I'll drive, so we don't have to be in a school bus. Those are not fun to stay with, but those are the areas. Let's see, the next thing to highlight, if you didn't already see an email, but I know Kendra Anderson's been trying to round up judges and people to help us host FBLA.
I volunteer for that.
Sweet, I was gonna say, if you guys have not logged into the spreadsheet, potentially Mike, you would be a great judge. I judged for them at the regionals when it was down south. I actually had a blast. I wish I could have done it all day long, but they ran out of things that they needed a judge for, so I had to come back and go. to the regional.
When does that start?
We're hosting it January, is it January 31st? So just to plug in that it's super cool, middle school and high school, all the teams come to compete, you get to give kids feedback. They have it well organized, but we'll need a lot of staff to do it.
The Kendra, is there like is an email, is there a link to it somewhere? She emailed me at my work email and asked me,
Okay.
and I had said I would, I don't think in the spreadsheet, I don't know about that.
did the same thing to me, and I've not found a spreadsheet. Okay,
But I'm
so
happy.
I know there's a spreadsheet because I plugged my name into it, so if you reach out to them,
Okay.
either they're entering your name in the spreadsheet. So as long as you tell them, that you're interested, they'll get your name on the spreadsheet, so they may have not shared.
I'll reach out to her, I didn't know if it was something you knew where it was, or if maybe I
Oh.
missed an email. So it's
I'm
fine.
sure I probably have it, because she
Oh,
emailed it to me like a couple months ago, so I put my name on it, so that's the visual I have in my head, but they're rounding up volunteers, because January 31st is gonna be around the corner.
Right.
Okay, so there's my plug for
So-
SBO.
Do we need do you have an email handy that we?
Either email or call Kendra or Julie Johansson over at the middle school, because it's gonna be hosted over at the middle school.
Okay,
And let them know that you wanna volunteer, and then mark out your whole day so that you can come help do whatever they need.
it's okay, be okay to just go by and talk to them?
Yeah,
I'd like
yeah, they're just trying to round up support, so,
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
okay.
I'm getting really old, so I'm gonna have a reminder, but
They'll,
maybe I could write something on my nose.
Yeah.
And then
they'll love it, you can call them, text them, anything, but January 31st is the day.
Did you say that you wanted help with that? I'm
Yeah,
emailing Julie right now.
Oh, sweet.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Lisa, can I
Yeah.
ask, what is the advocacy, up to 7, what does that look like? What would we be there to do? Would we go as a collective group to join a committee? Is it one person that goes up? What does that look like?
So, it would be testifying in two options, really. Testifying in a committee, and each committee has different rules, like the Senate or the House could have different rules on time. So you could have minutes to highlight, the bill that you're currently discussing, this is how it would impact Creswell. We need the sped cap removed. And because you've got your one sheet that we need to have in advance, we've got statistics to plug in our 3 or 4 minutes. So the committee testifying is one option. The second is, if OSBA organizes a day for board members to go up, then the House and senators are available, and we are slotted into timeframes where we have 10 or 15 minutes with each one, and we would rotate as it so if 3 or 4 of us went up, we would move as a group as Creswell and go sit with them for 10 or 15 minutes and tell our story one-on-one. Not in a public hearing, but in their office. I've done that before. And if they don't organize a day like that, then when we have information and we know a bill is coming, we can email and say, 2 of us want to come, Senator Krasinski, can we get 10 to 15 minutes of your time? Or a half an hour of your time, we want to inform you of what this bill that you're hearing in 2 weeks is gonna mean for Creswell.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah.
You're the perfect person for this.
100%.
Another,
Being on the.
another way to go,
Yeah.
that could work is having all of our data together and inviting them to a board meeting to share it with them. As well as the good things that are happening. Here's,
Yeah.
with the bond that we passed, the awesome grant, the seismic grants, these are the things that are happening around our district, our performance. We're doing well, but we need a little more. From you, so we wanted to share some information. They don't always want to hear I want. If we can show them, this is what we're doing.
We're meeting you more than halfway.
Good,
When did you say it was that? Did you say it was in January?
So the legislative session starts in January, and then, folks behind the scenes are already starting to draft ideas of bills right? Like senators or representatives need to sponsor them, so they're working with their people to sponsor what they want. And then, once it opens, the session will open, committees will open, and then they can unleash a flurry of bills. And some will get picked up and sponsored, some will get combined, because if you're working on one and I'm working on one and they're similar, they combine. So they start to get condensed down, some get dropped, some don't have enough support, so a lot of them die in committee. But the ones that you see starting to get picked up and get posted on a committee agenda to move forward, those have the most legs, and that's where we would want to. For the Salem option of lobbying,
So
it
we
starts
don't-
tracking that.
We don't know yet what those bills will look like what's coming, what's moving forward.
I think OSBA chooses their topics. I know through other professional means, like we know of what people are gonna start lobbying and pushing. And so we don't know specifics, but education is gonna be a focus. If we have lobbyists working on these areas, there's gonna be more momentum behind those bills because the lobbyists are gonna be there, the representatives are gonna get information, they're gonna know people are, like, there's pressure behind them, and so they're gonna wanna sponsor something that's good for their district. So it's kind of like where the storms all start to coalesce.
Sounds fun. Did I explain enough for this?
I'm just keeping you updated.
No, that's-
I'm more than happy to anybody that wants to go, because I wanna be able to.
I wouldn't mind learning more about the process. I definitely think that it's kind of interesting, and then I'm curious to see what comes with the storm.
You can all come with me. You know, speak to.
Well, after the governor, you know, after the legislature sees her proposed budget and then they start to comment on her proposed budget.
Yeah.
Then that's a starting place for advocacy for us for the other things. So her proposed budget is up 1 billion, 1.2, I think, which covers ground on some things, a lot of things. It's probably the one biggest move that we've seen for public education as long as I've been here, as far as gaining ground on funding. But some things that are left unfunded, like the sped cap at 11%, you know, where it's still underfunded across the state by 350 million. You know, and this is how it impacts us, and we really need support on raising that cap to 15%. That's the advocacy angle on that one. And a couple of others. So we're really honing in as superintendents on the ones that are not being covered by the governor's proposed budget. That would be and then these for this amount kind of thing.
How does our sped cap compare to other states or nationally?
I really don't know, but I would think that every state has impacted just as we are with the numbers of kids because of where we're at, you know, as a country and what's happened to us with COVID and all these other things combined. But we don't know that every state has a sped cap. They receive federal dollars for special education, and then it goes to special education. Ours, they receive special education dollars from the federal government, and then they have a cap on what a district can claim.
Do we know when that happened? Cause
Right.
is that something, or do we know when Oregon?
So it's part of the state school formula, and every state does their funding differently, right? Like all of our money gets collected and it goes to the state and then it gets redistributed. Not every state even does that.
Right,
So
but like the cap piece, like us having one,
I don't know.
I mean, I'll look.
It's always been there since I can. But
I'd be curious.
This formula came up when they reconstructed the formula on House Bill, or ballot measure 5. They had to reconfigure state funding when ballot measure 5 passed. And so that may be when the sped cap came in, so that would be in 1990.
1997 was when measured, wasn't that? When the state, when
In
the.
the nineties is when we started to get hit by
Yeah,
ballot measure 5. Where education funding was for the ballot measure 5 because that pulled back property taxes. So,
it would be 97. So it's been in there a long time. That's so nice, yeah.
I was in elementary school.
All right. Anything else for reports? Okay. Any board requests for future agenda items, please email into Mike and Debbie and Candace. And then there's some reminders of no school days, when classes resume on January 7th. Our next board meeting is the 15th. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we are good. Thank you. Thank you, Joel. Shut this off.